we would love it if you could drop your name, your organization, and where you are joining us from in the country in the chat. And we will, as Jeff said, get started here in a minute. All right, it is 1:05 Central, 2:05 Eastern time. So I think we will go ahead and get started. Thank you all for joining us today, and good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you're tuning in from. We're grateful to be here in the presence of so many wonderful RHY partners and our FISBE partners today to share a little bit about NRS programs and our services. I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but if you're just joining, if you could drop your name, your organization, and where you're joining from in the chat, we can get to know each other a little bit better. To get started, my name is Sam Gillis. I am the Chief Program Officer of the National Runaway Safeline, and I'll be co-leading you all through the presentation today with my wonderful colleague here, Jeff Stern. Jeff, do you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here. I'm very excited to share a little about National Runaway Safeline with you. My name is Jeff Stern. I'm the Chief Engagement Officer for the organization, and I'm looking forward to sharing more about what we do.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeff. We're also really excited to be joined here today by a couple of our other NRS colleagues, and they'll certainly be here to answer any questions or provide support as we go through the presentation today. But team, I think most of you are on camera, but if you're not at the moment, can you hop on and give us a quick wave when I call your name? We have joining with us today, Susan Frankel, our CEO, Shanae Weems, our Director of Training and Quality Assurance, Christopher Smith, our Communications and Graphic Design Coordinator, and Natalie Rusidlo, our Communications and Digital Media Coordinator. If I missed anyone, please forgive me and drop your name and info in the chat. But I also Jeff will get into this a bit more later, but I want to shout out Christopher and Natalie here. They are responsible for our awesome graphics on our website, and for keeping our social media pages looking really fresh and young. So we are forever indebted to them. Just really quickly, what you can expect over the next 50-ish minutes or so is an overview of NRS as an organization and the services that we offer. We're going to touch on some of the ongoing impacts of COVID-19 and key highlights from our 2021 crisis intervention data. And then Jeff is going to hone in on our presentation around prevention and education resources, new ways that we're engaging with young people, and highlight some of the specific ways you all as service providers and community members can get involved with NRS and the ways that we in turn can support you. Feel free to post questions in the chat. We'll have a couple of interactive ones here, and we'll try to get to the questions if you post them in the chat as we go. If we don't see them for any reason or we feel it's best to answer at the end, we will do that at the question section at the end of the presentation. Okay, let's get to it. Thanks, Jeff. So I said there would be a couple moments of interactive questions. And thank you again for introducing yourselves in the chat, but just as a follow-up and to get an even better idea or just like sense of who is in the proverbial room here, we're going to ask you to fill out the poll question on your screens. So have you or your organization worked with the National Runaway Safeline or used NRS services before? Give you just a couple of seconds here. It's an easy one.
All right, seems like we slowed down the number of folks filling it out. So we'll give it just a couple more seconds. And I'm going to end the poll. And here are the results.
Okay, that's okay, 50-50. So it looks like we've got some of you all who have worked with us before, but maybe just are joining to get a refresher or want to learn about some of the services that you're not as familiar with. And then we have some true newbies. So good news is whatever bucket you're in, you've come to the right presentation. So we'll go over the basics and just jump right in. So the National Runaway Safeline is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We've gone through a couple name iterations, but actually just celebrated 50 years as an organization this past fall. And we're super excited and proud to be continuing the work that we're doing here. We are based in Chicago, but serve the entire country. And a little fun fact, we've actually been based in the same Chicago neighborhood throughout that entire duration. For the locals or semi-locals, that is the Lakeview neighborhood in Chicago. Through a FISB-funded cooperative agreement, NRS operates the federally designated national communication system for youth in crisis, runaway, and homeless youth. And our focus and mission is to keep America's runaway, homeless, and at-risk youth off the streets and safe, or safe and off the streets, I should say. On average, NRS makes approximately 125,000 connections to young people, families, and service providers, offering help through our hotline, through online services, and other kinds of offline resources each year. We're going to get into much more detail about these connections and the data as we move through the presentation today. But first, I'm just going to provide an overview of the programs and services that we provide. So NRS operates a confidential, toll-free crisis hotline 24/7, 365 days a year through our 1-800-RUNAWAY number. So that's in addition to providing crisis support and services through 1-800-RUNAWAY.org. Our digital communication platforms include live chat, email, and forum postings. We also have a text line that you'll see here that we will be transitioning to live texting this year, and we're really excited about that, as our digital contacts are increasingly what we are seeing as the preferred method of outreach, especially among young people. So for some added context here, our chat service is accounting for just over half of the methods of contact that we receive right now. These mediums of crisis intervention and support are the national communication system that I referenced. And they're all staffed by trained staff and volunteers. Our primary target audience are young people aged 12 to 21. And as I'll talk about a little bit later, this age range is really starting to expand to a younger group. And of course, that we found we've really always been serving young people up to around age 24. But that main set that we've been targeting is 12 to 21. All of our services are trauma-informed and confidential, as I mentioned. We're focused on non-judgmental, non-directive, and solutions-focused crisis intervention and immediate support for young people, their families, and or trusted adults who are reaching out for just a range and variety of needs. The 5 main steps we use in our crisis intervention model are noted at the bottom of the screen here. We also offer a number of other services and support through information and referrals, our message service, conference calling, and our home-free family reunification and transportation program, along with offering you a range of materials on our website that you're able to order or download directly that are focused on education, outreach, prevention, as well as all kinds of promotional resources and materials that can be used in your programs or directly in your communities. You jump to the next one, Jeff. So this slide here is meant to provide a little bit more of an in-depth breakdown about the kinds of resources and referrals that we're able to provide. So serving as the national communication system, we see our role very much as a conduit or a connector to resources and direct services in local communities. So in other words, we are a bridge to you and your organizations. As a 24/7 national resource, we are accessible and reachable by young people, families, and service providers across the country around the clock. In doing so, we maintain a national database that contains 6,500 agencies, service providers, and resources comprised of everything ranging from like shelters, child protection information, legal information, counseling, law enforcement, things around medical systems, health services, residential treatment, substance treatment facilities, as well as other national hotlines that we partner with. Really just essentially most things that young people or someone helping out a young person might be in need of at the local level. Our goal and our focus is to ensure that we're providing information about those resources and making those connections so that young people and families have what they need where they are in their own communities, as I mentioned. And then just to give you a little bit of a sense of the depth and breadth of those resources, in 2021, our staff provided just north of 23,000 total referrals to young people, family members, and service providers who reached out and connected with us at the Safeline. And this was a 12% increase from 2020. Jeff will have a slide for you towards the end of this presentation if you'd like to get your organization added to our database, or if you want to just check in and see if you're already listed with us and maybe we need some updated contact info. Okay, looks like we're on the next one. So I just want to highlight a couple other services that are pretty unique to NRS that you might not be as familiar with. We have a confidential message service for youth and their families that's accessible by calling 1-800-RUNAWAY. What we see a lot of times is that this message service is a preferred service because it offers an indirect way for youth to communicate with family when they're away from home to let them know that they're safe. It's also a great stepping stone to direct contact, even if direct contact isn't necessarily like the goal just yet. How it works is one of our staff would take a message from the young person and then as a third party would call out to deliver the message to the loved one. The family member or loved one can then return the process in kind. We don't call out to the youth to deliver this message directly, and this is for safety purposes and just because, you know, their circumstances can change quite quickly. But we do instruct them when we talk to them initially to call back and to see if their message was delivered or if a message was left for them. As I said, it is often an initial indirect first step for a young person towards communication and potential reconciliation with their family. Our hope is that this leads to a more direct form of communication. Jump to the next one. So another service that we offer is a conference call with NRS. This could be one of those more direct forms of communication that I said we hoped we get a young person and their family to. What we do through this service is facilitate a conversation between the youth and their parent or guardian, where our staff are trained to serve as a mediator and advocate for the youth. We find that youth may have some difficulty expressing themselves fully and articulating their needs and concerns. So this really helps ensure that they can do that safely and productively. And the aim of this service is really for both sides to have an opportunity to express themselves and to be heard and make concrete steps toward finding a resolution, ideally with youth returning home if that is a safe and appropriate option. Next one, please. So this slide, we've got a program here that we are very proud of and fortunate to be able to deliver in partnership with Greyhound Lines. This program is incredible and really works to fill one of the largest service gaps in the field, that is transportation. The program was established in 1995, and through direct collaboration with Greyhound on every single ticket we issue, the goal of this program is to reunite runaway or homeless youth with their family or legal guardian by providing that free bus ticket home or to a safe alternative living arrangement. Youth 12 to 21 are eligible to use this program, and guardian tickets are available when there is a youth traveling between the ages of 12 and 17. Tickets are also available for youth traveling with their own young children. We're kind of seeing that more and more, and we are able to accommodate that for sure. Travel can be within a state, across state lines, or even across the country. There is some different criteria to consider for youth depending on their age, all for safety purposes, and usually has to do with like time of day or length of the ride. But these are all elements that we work out directly with Greyhound, and work very closely with the youth to set expectations and safety plan, around getting them their ride to their destination. Usually we can get a ticket issued within 24 hours of a youth reaching out to access the program. And in 2021, we were able to issue tickets to 237 youth to get a ride home. And since this program's inception, roughly 17,500 youth have actually used this program. Those numbers are even higher when you include the parents and the guardians who have used this program and accompanied the youth during transit home. A lot more information is available on this program on our website as well. Okay, now we're gonna switch gears a little bit and hop into the data. First thing to note with our data is that it is self-reported. So the information we're gonna show you is all coming from contacts that voluntarily chose to provide that information to us. So as I'm sure you know or can deduce, that can come with a few challenges and can skew things a bit here and there. But overall, it really gives us a good foundation and starting point to observe trends and patterns within our crisis contacts. So before we get into the 2021 data, we just wanted to take a moment to reflect on a couple of the trends that emerged during the pandemic, starting in March 2020. I don't think any of us will ever forget that date. This is not just, I want to share it now because it's not just in the context of the immediate impact of the young people and families we serve, but we really want to share it here so we can understand the ongoing impact and shifts that we need to be responding to accordingly and be prepared for all of the differences and challenges that come in the RHY field as a result of that. So I'll just jump into a couple. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I'll just highlight a couple of these little areas here. We saw a rise in mental health related concerns, prompting both reaching out to us at NRS, but also just general things that young people were experiencing. We have cited here, roughly 9,000 young people who self-reported mental health as a specific reason for reaching out to us. When you look back about a decade, mental health has not been in our top 4 reasons for reaching out. It's rarely even been in our top 10 reasons for reaching out. So this was really striking to us, and certainly a very salient issue that was present then and continues now. And it's something that we need to be thinking about and paying attention to as we move forward. We also saw that there was an 8% increase in contacts citing verbal abuse as a reason for reaching out, as well as a 4% increase in contacts citing physical abuse as a reason for that contact. Simultaneously, we saw on our end an increase in the number of abuse and neglect reports that we were filing on behalf of young people during this time. And no surprise, in 2020, we also saw an uptick in the number of home free tickets that we issued and an increase in the number of contacts citing financial reasons for reaching out to us. So this graphic here is just a way to give you like an overall picture of what we were seeing. Don't think it's that inconsistent with what many of you saw across the board among different kinds of agencies and different kinds of communities working with and serving young people. And as I stated, it just reaffirms the issues that we need to be paying attention to as we move forward together. But as we move to the next slide here, we just want to touch on a couple of reasons why we think that we saw these dynamic shift and what we are considering as we've moved forward through the pandemic. Overall, like just in general, there was a shift in the nature of crisis contacts in March 2020 that was to overall just more severe needs, most of which I think are pretty intuitive and probably in line again with what you all experienced as well. We saw some of the challenges that resulted in limited to no availability of shelter resources. Of course, this has all been quite fluid and has shifted a number of times and has shifted back substantially now. We also saw continued and regular emphasis and an increase in limited to no access to transportation for safe housing and for shelter. This is something that has also been an area of concern and an issue that we already feel very strongly about that was exacerbated, and we'll continue to invest in seeking solutions there. And it speaks to the importance of the partnership that we have with Greyhound and other transportation options and opportunities as we move forward in the work that we're doing. We also saw how critical the connections to the support systems that typically exist and are offered through schools, as well as things like drop-in centers, case management, and other resources, as maybe access shifted a little bit as a result of COVID. And again, as we're seeing the world open back up now and things are shifting still, we do know that these services are accessed and delivered in a way that might be a little different. Many for the better even. I think we all learned a lot through this terrible situation, but they are nonetheless different. And we have to pay attention to how important the role of schools and the people connected to those schools play in the lives of young people facing homelessness. And again, I'll say it again, I'm sure you all experienced this as well, but we saw more difficult and confined living arrangements and situations, particularly during the height of the lockdowns. Those are just some key highlights, but you can find more information about the impact of COVID-19 that we saw in our 2020 Crisis Services and Prevention Report that we released in partnership with Chapin Hall at the University of Chicago last fall. But just as I mentioned, some dynamics to be mindful of as we think about how they will continue to have an ongoing impact on the young people we serve. So I'm going to actually just go over this report really quickly. In addition to 2020, you may or may not be aware that we released a 2019 version of this same report, and we will be releasing another version with our 2021 data later this upcoming fall. So this time around, we'll mark 3 years of that level of analysis. And the report is really just meant to provide a snapshot and overview of the crisis contacts we responded to include demographic information, method of outreach, and the types of services and supports provided. What you'll see in the 2021 report that will be coming out in the fall is some of the data that I'm going to give you a little taste of next. Okay, so let's start. Jeff gave you like a little sneak peek, so I hope nobody actually can see that fast. But let's start with what you think were some of the contacts that we received. So if you could reply to the poll on your screen Which gender do you think young people who reach out to the National Runaway Safeline identify as the most? I'll give you a couple seconds here. How are we looking, Jeff?
Yeah, I give it just a couple more seconds. I'll shut it down. All right. Here are the results.
Okay, this is close, but ultimately you all are correct. In 2021, 66% of youth who contacted NRS identified as female. This was followed by 25% of contacts who identified as male, 5% who identified as gender non-confirming, and 4% who identified as transgender. And again, just remember, this data and the breakdowns are based on voluntary self-reporting. So this is the content that we do have. Okay, let's jump to the next one. Another question here. What do you think is the most common age range of those reaching out to NRS? We've got under 12, 12 to 14, 15 to 17, 18 to 21, and then 22 and over.
Okay, we'll just give it a couple more seconds.
Okay.
And here we go.
Okay, awesome. Y'all nailed it. You are correct. In 2021, 42% of youth who reached out to NRS were between the ages of 15 and 17. This is consistently our biggest age category, if you will. But over the last 2.5 years in particular, we are seeing a rise in younger youth reaching out to us. So in 2021, 20% of our contacts were actually directly from youth aged 12 to 24, or I'm sorry, that is a big age range, 12 to 14, and 3% were under the age of 12. We anticipate this trend continuing for a lot of reasons, including like greater access to social media among younger youth, more awareness of issues that affect youth, as well as youth having just greater access to the tools and language to be able to describe how they're feeling. Next slide, please. Okay, and this is just some additional demographics here of contacts that reported their race, ethnicity, talking a lot, to NRS in 2021. 46% identified as Caucasian, 25% identified as Black or African American, 16% identified as Hispanic or Latinx, 7% as multiracial, followed by 4% reporting Asian, and 1% reporting American Indian or Alaskan Native, and again, 1% for Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander. Next, please. Okay. This slide shows a map of our crisis contact volume for 2021. The darker the blue, the more contacts we received, essentially. So for the dark blue states, that's more than 681 contacts in each state. You can see that probably unsurprisingly, given the size of the states, that California, Texas, Florida, New York, and Georgia, the usual suspects I like to call them, have some of the largest volume. But Illinois and the Midwest actually have substantial contact volume as well. Illinois might not be much of a surprise since this is technically our home state, but just wanted to show this, like a look at this map, because it has changed over the years substantially. And we think it really speaks to the shift in awareness and increased use of NRS services across the country. We're really excited that the word's getting out and that young people have broader access to the resources that can potentially help them. Okay, let's do another poll. As far as issues that youth are seeking support with, What do you think is the most common reason youth share for reaching out to NRS? I'll give you a little more time on this.
Okay, pretty decisive group here on this one. I'm
Oh,
going to
yeah?
end the poll in just a couple seconds.
Okay. Okay, you guys are doing a really good job making my job easy here. So you are correct. Family dynamics is usually the most cited reason for contact seeking help. But before I dive into that a little bit, I want to note that most of the contacts who do reach out to NRS are youth seeking help for themselves. And they typically report more, one or more presenting issues or presenting problems as reasons for seeking the crisis intervention. So just because they selected one doesn't mean that there's not more things going on, as I'm sure you know. So circling back to family dynamics, again, that is the most cited reason for contact seeking help. It is consistently the leading category. And family dynamics kind of encapsulates conflict with rules, problems with parents or siblings, divorce or custody issues, death in the family, and teen parenting challenges. This category increased substantially from 57% in 2019 to 88% in 2020. But then now, or more recently, I should say, in 2021, this went back down to 57%. But again, still remains the leading reason for youth reaching out. On top of the, or our other top presenting issues, I should say, that we saw in 2020 continued as a trend throughout 2021 as well. So emotional or verbal abuse remained the second leading issue for reaching out at 21%, followed by mental health at 18% and peer or social issues at 16%. For some context, peer and social issues include things like problems with friends, internet relationships, gang involvement, sexual activity, romantic problems, etc. But what I really want to draw your attention to here is the mental health bucket. As I mentioned before, during 2020, we saw a 30% increase in contacts citing mental health as a reason for reaching out, and that this is the first time in a decade, within the last couple of years, that this number has really made it even into the top 4 reasons for reaching out. This year, this past year in 2021, it bypassed peer and social issues and bumped up to our top 3 reason for reaching out. So again, something we need to pay close attention to. Yep, next slide, thanks. And here you can see is this slide's covering youth location at the time of outreach to NRS in 2021. So 68% of contacts who reached out were still at home at the time of their outreach, while a combined 25% had left home or were on the streets. This 68% of youth reaching out from home figure is pretty consistent from 2020 and actually quite close to what it was in 2019 as well. So while a lot of our work is in the crisis intervention space with youth that have left home or are on the streets or experiencing a crisis at home, the majority of our contacts in the last couple of years have been from youth experiencing the issues that could propel them into those other circumstances. This really underscores the importance of the prevention work that we do and the need to continue to focus in that arena. So with that, I will stop talking and I will turn it over to Jeff to talk about some of our prevention and education resources.
Yeah, thank you for that, Sam. It's terrific context to talk about the work that we do in prevention and education, and how our hope is ultimately that we both support young people and that we support you potentially in the work that you do with young people around the country. So what I was hoping to do in our last few minutes here is to show you some resources that we have available through our website and through various sources that might be of use to you in the work that you do. So the first is just to highlight here our website at 1-800-runaway.org. This updated site is a little over a year old. And as you'll see here on the site, it has these options for direct outreach, right, for youth in crisis potentially. But then at the top blue bar has drop downs related potentially to supporting different groups of folks. One of which, as you'll see here, is prevention and education, and another is service providers. So the idea of this site, as hopefully is clear based on its brightness and things, is that it's instinctual, hopefully very easy to use, offers interesting materials and useful materials for a lot of different folks who we serve and then potentially who you serve as well. Hopefully it looks nice and modern and appealing, especially for youth who are, I hope we all think is kind of our primary folks we want to reach out to. We've really updated the content, continue to update the content, and try our best to delineate that for different groups of folks, and keep the material very current and also very mobile friendly, the site. So if you were to access this on your phones, it would look a little different, but obviously just adjusted for mobile device. I mentioned the prevention and education dropdown in particular. So I just wanted to highlight some things you'd see under there. And as Sam said, when we see upwards of 70% of youth reaching out from home, we see that, yes, there are certainly cases probably where because of COVID, people were reaching out from home because they were stuck, right? It might not be the safest place, but in many cases, we hope this means people are reaching out before they hit crisis, and that we might be able to offer intervention and help prevent a crisis from occurring in the first place. So we see our work in prevention and education as being extremely important. In that drop-down tab, prevention and education are, as you see on the right, there are several opportunities and things that I'm going to get into several of these, things that we do related to prevention. I'm going to talk about our social media campaign in just a little while, same with National Runaway Prevention Month and how you can get involved with that, along with our outreach materials. I'm going to start, though, with our Let's Talk Runaway Prevention curriculum. If you've registered for this, hopefully you've seen that this is part of a two-part webinar series, the second of which is exactly a week from when this started, 2 p.m. Eastern, next Wednesday, April 27th. And that conversation is going to focus specifically on the Let's Talk Runaway Prevention curriculum and what a wonderful resource it is. In particular, we're anxious to share it with you, even if you've seen this before, because if you have, perhaps you notice that the look of that cover sheet on the left is quite different from what it used to look like. We've done some modernizations to the look, a little bit of update to content as well, and are in the midst of a much larger overhaul to really modernize the document in the next year or so. But overall, the goals of the curriculum will not change, and our processes basically will stay very similar. And the idea of the curriculum is to provide this to facilitators who can help young people build life skills, educate them about opportunities to avoid running away, other alternatives, how to seek help from people they trust, and to know about more resources available to them. The audience, generally, we say the document is intended for youth ages 12 to 20. That's a huge age range. We acknowledge that right up front. The idea of the curriculum is that it's available and it has different resources and that you can tailor it to make it work for your population, whether that has to do with cultural differences, age differences, whatever it might be. The curriculum is available in both English and Spanish. One note, the Spanish version is still in the older look, so we're going to update that as well as we continue to modernize this document, but the content is still absolutely there for your use. And the great thing about it as well is that it really is useful in a range of contexts, as I mentioned, whether it's in different contexts for you in schools, after-school programs, RHY programs, youth groups. The other thing that's great about it is it's a 14-module document on a range of topics. But what's great about it is that it's not necessarily intended to be used as a through document. You do not need to do module 1 to module 2 to module 3. You can absolutely pick and choose the modules that best apply to your needs and your population. So you can get to that, again, through the Prevention and Education tab. There's a long link there, but your best bet is to go to our site and just go to the Runaway and Prevention tab, and you'll very quickly get to information on that. Also, just to mention the service providers tab, I mentioned that already. And again, I'm going to go over some of the opportunities in here in this tab as well, specifically partnering with us. But there's a lot of different ways to get in touch with us and to work with us that we have available throughout the website. So I just wanted to make sure to point that out. So how can we support you all? How can we support service providers? One thing that we've done more of recently that we're very excited about is as we've continued to use data more and more to help guide the work that we do. And as we mentioned, the Chapin Hall report annually with, the crisis services report built in collaboration with Chapin Hall. We have data that we are happy to share. So this, as you can see here, this is an example when we were connecting with folks in North and South Dakota together, where we put together some statistics on our crisis services numbers in 2020 for youth we connected with in the Dakotas. So we can build this, we can build a graphic of this for you. I've been asked about this in a specific county. I've been asked about these kinds of things within a specific area code, where we do our best to get within an area code and represent counties. And we can go back and forth to make sure we're capturing the data, or we're presenting you with the data that is most helpful to you. If we can capture it, we want to help you provide this information. I see a question. That's awesome. Who do we contact for this data? If one of my colleagues wants to provide my email in there while I present, I'm happy to be the person who is happy to make those connections and facilitate that, for sure. So that's one thing we are happy to do for you, whether it's for a grant application, whether it's just helpful for you to know, we can provide data that we collect. Another thing we can do to help you help young people, we hope, is to provide educational and outreach materials that you can distribute, so that if you want to have, whether it's social media graphics to share digitally, whether it's brochures about our organization that you want to have in your center for young people to reach out to us, pull tab flyers, bookmarks. We have all these different flyers available. What's neat is that they're available digitally. If you wanted to post it digitally and just print one or two locally, or you see on the right here, there's a materials order form. My colleague Christopher, who's writing you a lot in here right now, will put together essentially a free care package to you that will include whatever materials you would like for us to send in larger quantities. We're happy to do this. This is something we love to do. And I see Christopher is putting up more details there on it, as always. So we'd love to share these things with you. Again, it's available under that prevention and education tool. The other thing that we would love to do is, Sam mentioned early on that we have a resource database for young people and families of about 6,500 organizations and places around the country. If you are not a member of that database, but you should be in your community, we want you to be. We want to partner with you if you are a place that we should be connecting young people to when they need help in the areas that you serve. So there's a way to get involved with us on that. Again, you can, if you go to the service providers tab in this case, there's a partner with us tool, and then you can make a request and reach out to us to be included on our database. If you're not sure if you're a member of our database, feel free to reach out to us. Again, you see there's an email there, resources at 1-800-runaway.org. Feel free to reach out to us, or we'll have Sam's email at the end of this presentation. You can even reach out to Sam directly on that to be sure that you are in our system. Okay, our last trivia. So how do you think most people find out about us? And this is going to lead into kind of our final topic before we get to some questions. So I just launched one more poll here. How do you think most people find out about and get in contact with us? I feel like maybe we've hinted at this already, but interested to see how you think people might reach out to us. And it's very possible that the way folks reach out to us might be different than you connect with folks locally in your community. So I'll give it just a couple more seconds here. All right, and I'm going to end the poll. And as usual, groupthink works. The internet, yes, absolutely. We are seeing people reaching out to us and telling us when they respond to us in direct questions that they reach out and they find out about us through the internet. And as Sam alluded to earlier, we're seeing more and more contexts, especially younger age contexts, choosing to reach out to us through digital means. So the internet is our friend, has to be our friend, because it's we know young people who need us, those people we want to serve most of all. That is how they want to communicate most of all. And so what I wanted to share with you here as we start winding down is to share some of what we've done recently to try to update our services and the way we connect with young people through our different services to make sure to reach them through the means they want to. And I do this hopefully to potentially give some ideas to you and your community. Again, that might not be the best word of mouth in your community, but for us, this has been quite successful. So I wanted to share as an example, here's a look at Instagram for us right now. This is something we've done. We've done a couple of social media and visibility campaigns over the last year. And our communications team, Christopher, who's writing you, and Natalie, who's on the call as well, especially, are just doing an amazing job of using graphics, using colors, using messaging that reaches out to young people. And as you can see here, you just look at the visual here, how connected it all is, to really integrate our messaging and to make sure to message things in a way that really aims to connect with people 12 to 21, especially focusing on that kind of teenage age where we see is where most people seem to reach out to us. So we're using older platforms in new ways, trying to think about how we differentiate our messaging, for example, on Facebook versus Instagram, versus TikTok versus Twitter. Where are young people? Well, these campaigns have shown us actually that as much as I tend to live more in the Facebook world, that's not where young people are living. So how do we message things differently on Facebook than what we're doing in a different platform? And also responding more and more and interacting more with comments when people reach out to us. It's something we're trying to do a lot of as a communications team. We did a campaign earlier, and here for a little interactivity, called Let's Step Forward Together. We worked with an agency to build a campaign. I guess it was about December of 2020 now. And we did that campaign in January of 2021, and then did sort of a back to school campaign that we did internally right in the late summer of 2021. And we called the campaign Let's Step Forward Together. This ad is just 15 seconds long. I wanted to share with you, and this was showing on YouTube. We used that as a way to do some paid advertisements along with some other social media avenues. So here's a quick ad for your reference. So just a quick ad to share. And as you can see, hopefully we use our colors, we've brightened things up, and we have some the here to listen, here to help messaging, as we are here to listen and to help 24/7. So that was one thing we did. Another thing we did with this campaign at the same time, is we made different messages that kind of played on a theme. If you look in the background of these images, you'll see references to shoes stepping forward together. We translated all of these messages to Spanish as well, and created a landing page in Spanish to help connect folks who need us there. We do have the opportunity for translation services to Spanish and other languages when people reach out to us. So that's something we certainly can help facilitate. And we had a campaign that was quite successful in helping us also understand different regions where folks are looking at our materials more through social media, build our social media database here, and then also just continue to get the word out in a different way. And we're going to continue to use these messages now and in the future. Another way that I want to invite you to get involved as we conclude here with the work that we do in particular, is to join us as part of National Runaway Prevention Month. National Runaway Prevention Month takes place every November. We work with FISB, our friends at FISB, and with partners around the country to shine a light on the issues facing runaway and homeless youth all month long. We do a ton of activities, and people are doing them locally and nationally. It's become a huge social media event over the course of the month, to the point that we now have an award ceremony at the end honoring and recognizing different partners around the country to share the stories of what they've done in their local communities. It even involves lighting up buildings in green, the color of National Runaway Prevention Month. We had, I can think of 3 state houses lit up in green this past year, Niagara Falls, entire city skylines. The city of Charlotte, North Carolina was basically entirely lit up in green one night. Really proud of it. We had I think about 150 partners last year, and we want that to grow. We want more partners. We want to spread the word. We want to get people engaged across the country. We want to get more youth involved, youth who want to support a cause like this and help spread the word in their community. As you can see here, 1-800-runaway.org/NRPM is the place to go to learn a little bit more. We have a short little video here to give you an idea. So I'm really glad that said download the toolkit today, so that I didn't forget to mention that we provide a lot of resources to help you, if you're a first timer or not, to join us for NRPM, as we call it. We provide a lot of resources to help give you ideas to decide what might work in your community. We provide whole toolkits. And in that toolkit are social media messages. We offer social media messages and that you can just plug in through our website. We offer sample proclamation languages if you want to reach out to local governments. We share how we've been able to put things together, messaging you can do in media markets if you want to spread the word in media markets as well. So we would love to have you join us for National Runaway Prevention Month. Much more to come on that. But with that, want to leave the last few minutes to see if there are any questions about what we've discussed today. We would love to field any questions. Of course, we're happy to follow up with you all on the last slide here in just a second. I'm going to provide the contact information for both Sam and me. And you are more than welcome to reach out to either of us. And if the question is better directed in a different place, we can always forward your questions to the right people on our team. So again, thank you for joining us today. If you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself. And if you have questions that you don't want to do that, feel free to throw it in the chat as well. I see one question. Oh, Christopher was clarifying about the toolkit. Yes, we will update the toolkit and it will be available over the summer for 2022. Can you explain more of the conflict resolution services that you provide to families? What does that process look like? Sam, I might leave that one to you if that's all right.
Yeah, sure. So this is our, it could kind of fall into 2 different buckets here, but this could be, conflict comes in all different shapes and sizes and places and spaces. And it's often a reason why youth are leaving home. So this can show up in our message service where youth are have the ability to reach out to us and leave a message for their parent or their legal guardian to start a conversation when they are not ready to have that kind of direct or face-to-face contact with them yet to have the conversation. We often see that process then trickle over into our conference calling option, where I think is more so where your question is directed, where we serve as sort of mediators and advocates for youth to have difficult conversations with their legal guardians. So the process involves youth youth reaching out to our 1-800-RUNAWAY number and requesting a conference call with a parent. And so what would happen is we would talk through a plan with the youth before we actually make the outreach to the adult in the situation, and talk through kind of like what are their goals, what do they want to get out of this conversation, and ways to kind of make sure that we are checking them and gauging their expectations about what could potentially happen. And then essentially we get them on a conference call so we are able to be that mediator and to advocate for them on their behalf. Sometimes we have more than one of those calls to talk through a situation. And sometimes we have the one call that could result in a youth returning home, or it could result, maybe in a youth isn't quite ready to do that yet. But it's usually a good step towards resolution. I'm sorry, I'm seeing more come in here.
There was a question about how do you navigate youth running away from abusive homes and navigate youth who are experiencing or at high risk of human trafficking.
Right, okay. So as part of our crisis intervention model, one of the first things that we are going to do is to establish immediate safety, right? And determine if we are able to have a conversation in that moment and for how long we're able to have that conversation. Or if that conversation is better picked up at a later time. But first thing we would do is that immediate safety plan, and then talk through kind of how a youth is feeling and what they hope to get out of the situation. So a lot of, sorry, things keep coming through for me and moving the question. So how we navigate those risks is really by letting them guide the conversation and having them tell us and empower them to say when they can continue the conversation and when they cannot. So it's really, we're following their lead and being non-directive in that situation and empowering them that they can call us back when there's a safer option. I hope that helped answer the question.
There was another question about turnaround time on our home free program, and generally this can be in 24 hours. Sometimes it can take a little bit longer, just in terms of facilitating all sides of it. But I mean, Sam, feel free to chime in, but we try to make this happen as quickly as possible. But in terms of going through the process, sometimes it can take a little bit longer.
Yes, so we have a special phone number that we call, that's a direct line to that section of Greyhound. And so if it is something when they are closed for the day, we might have to pick up that conversation in the morning, but it's usually a 24-hour to 48-hour turnaround of when we're able to book the ticket. And then, through the course of that home free process, we are dealing with, youth leaving, or being a part of unsafe situations. If we get any, I didn't mention this earlier, but we are mandated reporters. So if we do get information, specific details about a youth situation and the parties involved, we can facilitate and do facilitate reporting when we are required to the appropriate entities, whether that's CPS or law enforcement. And that, I should have mentioned that as well, like in regards to the youth that are experiencing abusive situations at home or at risk for human trafficking or are in trafficking situations. Same thing applies, mandated reporters when we have the information to report.
And Sam, there was a follow-up question. Can organizations initiate the contact for the home free program?
Yes, they can reach out to us, but what we would usually do is try to get the youth on the line after that. I think it doesn't happen as often, but I think it's actually really great when organizations do reach out on behalf of the youth, because we can talk through the different criteria and eligibility for that youth with that provider in that moment, so they can be a bridge to kind of relaying that information to the youth, and really feeling out and explaining to them if this is something that they would be seeking or wanting. So yes, they can, but ultimately we would want to talk with the youth directly as well.
So just in the interest of time, I don't see any other questions in the chat at the moment, but again, I'm posting right now. Here is our contact information. We invite you to reach out to us. We truly welcome conversations and trying to build relationships with as many of you as we can, to support you and to support one another. So please do engage with us. One thing that I saw Christopher put in here that we absolutely need to add to this presentation in the future, a relatively new thing that we're doing is a podcast series called Let's Talk. And the next episode of that is going to be available next Thursday, April 27th. Next Wednesday, I think, April 27th. And we have conversations with others in the field, talking about lots of issues that impact runaway and homeless youth, sometimes talking with young people with lived experience as well. So please be on the lookout for that. It's now available. We're very happy. It's now available through Apple Podcasts and Spotify too. So we're trying to spread the word about that. And I know Christopher threw that in the chat with the link just a few moments ago. So just again, to be cognizant of everybody's time, huge thanks. I see Anna Cody, our officer who works with us at FISB. Want to thank Anna for her support and for joining us today. Other folks who are at FISB who have joined us today, and all of you who have made the time in your schedules to be part of our conversation today. I hope we were able to answer some questions, give you some ideas, and I hope it's very clear that we would love to continue the conversation in the future. If you have not yet registered for next Wednesday, April 27th, second part of this webinar series about Let's Talk, I will throw the link in the chat one more time. Please do register with us. And thank you again for joining us today.